morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are in the world.
Hello.
Welcome to babyyumyum.co.za. I'm Amanda Regaly, Chief Mommy and Founder.
And I'm Priscilla Matova. Yes, Sisonke Namhlanje again.
Today we have with us the most amazing, glamorous, groovy, gorgeous Dr. Gynae in the house. Officially known as Dr. Mpumi Zenda. And for those of you that don't know, she's been doing amazing things with us in the past. We've had her on our wellness workshops, we've had her on our talks, we've had her on our Insta lives. A bit of background about Dr. Mpumi. She is how should we call you? Should we call you Dr. Gynae, or should we call you Dr. Mpumi, or should we call you Dr. Zenda? Firstly, what do you prefer to be called?
I find it's just easier to call me Dr. Gynae, just because of the work that's out there. Yeah. But obviously for the purposes of, professional name, and when people want to find me, it's easier to find Dr. Mpumi Zenda as well, for like consultations and things. But really, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're comfortable with, I'm happy.
Angela will just call you Dr. Gynae. I think that works best for us.
100%.
That's perfectly fine.
Awesome. Now you are an OB-GYN and a sexologist and one of the leading experts in sexual health, and you are very, very active in terms of education and activism, and we are very honored to have you chatting to us today. And today what we thought would be phenomenal to talk to you about is we wanted to chat to you about obesity and the link between young girls that are overweight and early menstruation. So we thought it would be great to chat to you, but before we get into that, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself? Because I'm sure everyone's going to be rushing out now, checking out on social media.
So as you have mentioned, my name is Dr. Mpumi Zenda, Dr. Gynae. I am OB-GYN sexologist, which means I am in full-time practice when it comes to women's health in all its totality. So whether it's delivering babies, but also I think an area that very often is either dismissed or we don't pay as much attention is the woman who's not even trying to be pregnant for that matter. So your teens, reproductive age, but not wanting to have children. Also the menopausal woman. And I think I went a step further because I believe part of our reproductive system, or part of it is for us to have pleasurable sexual health as well. And also
Baby Yum Yum is a big advocate for that. Say yes.
So I figured I'm going to take one for the team, for all the ladies, and be like, you know what? If we can get to understand our bodies, know how our bodies function, and know when there are issues, then we'll probably do a whole lot better in our day-to-day lives, in our careers, and so forth. So that is what I do. I look after women in particular, but also couples when it comes to sexual and reproductive health and function.
Absolutely fantastic. And you are an amazing influencer. We can find you on social media giving your pearls of wisdom all the time. So thank you for that as well. If we get cut off now, just join the session again. You know how Zoom is. If we get cut off, we'll just join again, and then I'll just obviously cut that out as well. Okay, so let's chat about this link that has come about between overweight young girls and early menstruation. And I think it's important, let's take a step back. Why are girls getting their periods so much earlier? I think, when we were young, I got my period at 12. I think it was 12. What age did you get your period?
I think also my age was around about 12, and it was way late, and that was like not odd. It was okay because 10, 11, 12, it was okay. But recently, 9-year-olds, like you getting amazed at that.
Yeah. So why are girls getting it earlier?
So there's actually a number of, when you look deeply into the research, one of the big things that we are definitely noticing is that, yes, there is a link between menstruation and, I don't want to say obesity, but rather even overweight and obesity, childhood obesity, which is something that has increased quite significantly. When you look at the data, we've moved from like 8% all the way to about 20% of childhood obesity, for example. And that has to do with the kind of diets that we are the kind of foods that we're eating, the kind of activity. A lot of our kids are more into gadgets, and a lot of girls in particular tend to also stop playing sports, or kind of like become disinterested as they get into their tween and teenagers. What was quite interesting though is, yes, you actually, even before you get to obesity, normally you need a certain percentage of body fat in your system to be able to kickstart your period to start off with. Now, when we talk about why do girls get their periods, I think maybe let's open it up a little bit and say, why do girls get their puberty? Because sometimes it's not the period, but it's the breast development that happens. It's the armpit, it's the hair that starts to grow, and it may happen. So we are seeing what traditionally used to look like anything from like 9 to 11 years of age for girls. We're seeing girls also at the age of like 8 years of age. And part of it has to do with the amount of the percentage of fat in their system, but also what has not been researched well is, so where is the link then in terms of the genetics, in terms of hereditary, what comes from your lineage, your DNA, for example? Because what was quite interesting is you found when they compared, this was a study done in the US, when they compared both African American girls versus to Caucasian or white girls, Black girls actually got their periods even earlier. So whilst the white counterparts were just 1 year earlier, the Black girls were 2 years earlier, for example. And that's the link we haven't figured out. Where does that come from? Because obviously, if you're looking at both parties as obese or overweight, that makes sense. But why is the other one more pronounced on the other one? So there's a lot of research that needs to be done. But what is quite evident is the fact that we do need, whether it's as parents, as clinicians, we do need to go back and say, how do we become preventative? Because there are obvious repercussions to this going forward.
Wow. So one thing that comes to mind, Dr. Zenda, when you talk about puberty and so on, I remember back in the days, they used to say, ungadli acha, because you'll start smelling your armpits, your breast will grow. So they'll put away acha. But is that still the case with us when you talk in terms of diet and puberty? And early puberty.
So in terms of like how we excrete body fluid, whether it's sweat, whether it's discharge, anything we eat, or a lot of the things, especially if they have strong smells, they do have the opportunity to come through it. But it really doesn't have, and very often it's in the absence of balancing with something like good intake of water. So when we talk about lifestyle, diet in particular, and I often say, kids do what parents do, not what parents say. And so if mom and dad are like pouring acha on everything that they eat, your kids are going to be like,
this must to eat, because you'll reach puberty too fast. But yeah, true.
No, absolutely not. So in terms of the smells, no, not really. But an unhealthy or an unbalanced diet that leads to a body fat percentage that is higher than it should be, that definitely does have a link.
Awesome. Okay.
And acha, the basis of acha is just oil, from what I've seen.
True. No, that is true. Hence, I think our all grannies will be like, no, girls do not eat acha until they are 12 or 13, because you'll reach puberty too fast.
No, I mean, that is so interesting. I mean, and there's so many midwives' tales and so many traditional tales, which we'll chat about a little bit just now, but in regards to the work that you're doing. But it's really interesting how, that is the basis of that, is that there's oil and there's fat, and that it's increasing the fat content in your body, essentially.
Yeah. And let's be fair, you're not pouring acha on like fruit and vegetables. Generally, pouring acha on other stuff that is just as
you got that to be basic. Yes, true.
There you go.
So in South Africa, at the moment, what is the average age of a young girl getting her period?
Look, we're still seeing an average of anything between 9 and 11 years of age. But like you said, when you look at, for example, 20, 30 years ago, it was considered pretty normal for girls to get their period between like 12 and 14 years of age. So you can see the slight shift backwards. I think where we often or parents get often concerned is when you hit the ages like 9 years of age and 8 years of age. And part of it has to do with, one, just the physiological changes that girls go through that are weird, awkward. Sometimes they don't know how to make, you know, head or tail of them. And when you think about the practicalities of things like period, you know, how does a 9-year-old kind of just manage a period to start off with? But the other one that probably is alarming for a lot of parents is, oh my goodness, if she has a period at 8, that means she could potentially fall pregnant if you know, they start playing around. And that is a reality. Yeah.
You know, I'm like terrified,
which is true.
And so when you see statistics of 10-year-olds being pregnant, that is a symptom that should be like alarm bells for us to say, what are we doing or not doing enough in terms of educating? And parents feel less, you know, it's easier to talk to a 13-year-old about periods than to talk to an 8-year-old, for example, right? Because you're thinking they're still a child. What do they even understand about this? And I think we need to come out of that, find age-appropriate ways of having these conversations with the girls, but also to just alleviate that stressor on them. Because in reality, an 8-year-old and puberty, it's just like a lot.
True. I'm just getting mine to brush your teeth every day. Now I've got to have a period.
It's really a lot to take into.
It really is. What are our schools doing in terms of educating kids? Like when I was at school, I think it was FAMSA, used to have period or family education talks, but you have to do it off-site because that was in the days. What are schools doing now? What sex education and what period education exists now? And most importantly, are the boys being educated on girls' periods as well?
Yeah. So to be fair, actually, and when I used to particularly run in the West Rand district as you know, district obstetrician, part of the portfolio was school health. One of the things that we are notorious for as South Africa is we've got absolutely great and amazing policies, but in terms of implementation, that's where things often go wrong. And part of the reason you have to look at the girls or the schools that go in the most underprivileged schools for you to really determine what's happening. If you look at a private school, so much happens, whether it's from parents, NGOs, and just the resource capacity that they have. They can get, you know, private people to come in with, whether it's healthcare professionals, counselors who come in and have these discussions. But when you look, for example, in public sector, a lot of the times we depend on that life orientation teacher with that, kind of stated out policy or education. The difficulty with that is very often LO teachers are not necessarily trained in being able to have these kind of conversations. So you find they actually subconsciously include their own biases as they teach. So if somebody is uncomfortable with saying the word vagina, for example, they will fill it in with whatever and teach whatever or how it in the way that they're most comfortable.
That is so true, Dr. Gailey, because I'm sorry to, going back to the olden days where you are in an assembly and it's just girls only, and they go like, you dare meet with a boy. You'll see yourself. And that was the end of the conversation, because of also where they're coming from, of also where they were, what they were taught, because it's just an LO teacher who's got no experience, or as you say, can't even say the word vagina.
100%. Or wait, my favorite one was, you will not have peanut butter on your sandwiches because it makes you horny, or, you know, those kind of things. And that is just lack of education. And that's really olden day type of thinking. And again, you know, actually, interestingly enough, when I think about that, it goes back to what our topic is about, obesity. If you think about it, potentially it's going back to the peanut butter is full of fat. So perhaps there's a link there. The more peanut butter, the more fat you're taking in, the more estrogen it's producing, the more fertile you are. So maybe they did have a point in some way. I don't know, somewhere.
I don't know. I genuinely, a lot of what we learned growing up, and this is the stuff we need to correct, was very fear-based. And people don't learn like that. You can't teach somebody using fear. You have to give people accurate information. And rightfully so, as you're saying, the biggest difficulty is that one, it's topics that a lot of parents find difficult to have. But secondly, a lot of parents are not necessarily medically inclined. So they themselves don't fully have all the puzzles fitting in, like, okay, I know exactly what I need to talk about. Over and above, it's that, how do I gauge age appropriately what is okay for me to talk to the girls about? And coming to whether boys are being taught, they are being included in a lot of, from what I've seen, they're supposed to be included. There are so many things that boys have mothers, have sisters, have cousins, but also it helps them to be able to, how do you support a girl when they start their period in class, for example? In one of the schools that I went to visit, one of the things I said, it's so gentlemanlike of you, if somebody has had a period unexpected, that you take off your jersey and you cover them instead of laughing. That is how that's how you can be supportive. If somebody says, I've got period pains, I've got period cramps, can I go and fill up your hot water bottle? So it's socializing boys from a young age, how to treat girls and how to not make our reproductive health this taboo thing where, even sometimes when I'm at the practice, you'll find, I'm going to go and do a pap smear, and the guy or the partner is like, oh no, I'm going to stay outside. I'm like, no. You come inside. You need to see, what actually happens, because the more information you have, the more you are likely to want to understand and be able to treat the girl or the woman with just a little bit more kindness and not dismissive of what they go through.
That is so true, because what you're saying is it's going back and re-educating our both boys and girls on what is periods and how also to handle it. Because also we keep on going back, and as we going back, for me, it's like I need to go back and sit down with my boys and re-educate. Because with my time, when I got my first period, guys, I was in the streets wearing a white tight and naked lalakati. So the legs go out, and there was a white mark, and everybody was like, oh, because no one was educated.
Correct.
I went home crying because everybody laughed at me saying, you got your period. But I said, no, I just spilled tomato sauce, trying to make all the excuses that were not there. They all knew, because they were older than me. They were 13, also, they all knew. So it's actually going back and sitting down and saying also to my boys, I've got boys, I might have got girls, and say, let's re-educate and basically sit down and tell the facts as they are.
Absolutely. And we should be,
and psychologically as well. It can have such an impact in your, later on, you find that something about your confidence was knocked at that time, and you'll find somebody in their mid-30s saying, I hate my period, and you're like,
of that bad experience.
But it's because of all the childhood experiences that nobody takes the time to sit us down and say, this is what is happening to your body. This is what you're going through. This is perfectly normal. And I wait for the day when period celebration, when something like that happens, everybody will clap hands and be like, oh my gosh, you are becoming a woman. And it is a celebration rather than this shameful, stigmatized event.
Absolutely. And it's so exciting. It's such an exciting time. It's the only life cycle, or the life, I suppose, occasion in your life of something that actually belongs to you. A wedding belongs to you. A child belongs to you. It's your own thing. And there are so many cultures that do celebrate it and make a huge thing of it. And we need to make it a normal thing, whether it's guys, guess what? My daughter got her period, come on for cake
And it's a
tea.
celebration.
You know,
Exactly.
we need
Yep.
to do it.
Period parties are a thing.
And we need to change it also in our Black communities, because it was a shameful thing. Like, you will go home and hide because of that. But as you're saying, when you go back to your schools and we go back to our community and we educate
Absolutely.
and celebrate it.
Yeah.
How, just a quick question off the side of that, you know, there are certain cultures and religions as well where, you know, you don't for 7 days you won't be intimate with your husband you know, during or after your period, or you won't even touch a man during that period. And you know, during that time, it's almost seen as like you've got your period, and it's a shameful thing, and it's almost like a wicked thing to have, and it's like you're toxic kind of thing. And that's of women of an older sort of age who are now married. I mean, how do you change that sort of mindset? That's a really, really difficult thing, because it's that whole like religious pressure behind you, you know, to put your own views over religion. It's a very difficult one. It's interesting to try and change the stigma again of it's an amazing thing to have a period. It's not something that's shameful or dirty.
Hide it,
But even with that, you know, I often say, and yes, because there's such a diversity in terms of our religious beliefs.
Yes.
I also think our religious beliefs or our spirituality should never be a point where it oppresses anybody. Cultures, for example, it should not be oppressive. It should be uplifting. It should be celebratory. And so I don't know, because I don't particularly, you know, practice that religion, but it would be interesting to find out what was the real reason behind it. I know that when you look, for example, some of the biblical stuff, it actually used to be said, you are unclean, which I, you know, I'm not a religious scholar, but I don't agree in the way that we understand uncleanliness or dirty, or the way that we are made to feel in this day and age. So that becomes a responsibility of religious leaders on how do you normalize, and not just normalize, how do you make people understand that it's not a shame thing, but it does need to change. I often think of it as it's actually not a bad thing. It's like, you know what, mom or my sister gets a break when she's on her period because she's going through PMS, she's not feeling so well. So that's our way of giving her a break from the usual chores.
I love that. Absolutely. It needs to be looked at in a different sort of way. 100%. Absolutely. And so I think, we've moved away from, what we originally started with was obese, the link between young, which is adolescence or early childhood obesity and the early onset of menstruation. But, a lot of things are all tied together. But I think what's phenomenal and what's coming out of the messaging that you're giving here is that it really all goes back to education. And there is so much education on babies, and a lot of education on sex, and a lot of education on many, many, many things. But yet there is so limited education on periods.
There is.
And I'm not going to give away too many details, because we're going to have to do something very big when it comes to this, and another whole separate interview on it. But tell me what your personal mission is, Dr. Guiney, and what you are doing in terms of educating the youth of South Africa on periods.
Yeah, it is so interesting how things always just align at the right time. One of the studies that has come out, I forget what the name is, but there's a recent South African study that was done in literally two schools out of every province regarding menstruation. And some of the key messages that came out of that was, again, it's the education that's not there. It's not just the education on the child's part, but it's also the education on the parent side of things. My own experiences have led me to this point, in the sense that my mother, she's retired, beautiful, amazing woman, was a midwife. But even my mother, with what you would think she has all the information, because of the cultural norms of, not being able to have those kind of conversations, she couldn't for the life of her just utter a word about okay, so this is what's happening to your body, and then when you look at all the plights that we eventually experience as women in relationships, in how we negotiate consent, in how we, in how we look at ourselves, we talk about self-love. A lot of it has to do with how we were made to feel ashamed of our bodies when we did that transition between childhood and womanhood or adulthood. And so one of the things that I've decided, people would often think the first kind of book or thing work on sex or on adult women, and I said, no, let's go to the basics, because if you can educate the parent and the child in terms of, why is my body changing? This is normal, but nobody speaks about it. And very often, especially now, if you're not medically inclined, you don't even know what's causing it. Your hips widen, your breasts grow, the way your skin changes. There's so many changes and so many things that affect teenagers in particular. Psychologically, your moods change. And nobody speaks about it. So one of the big things that's coming out very soon is a manuscript for specifically between the age of 8 and 17. It's written in the way of what that kind of age looks like. But also what was key for me was to write it in a way where a parent or a guardian or an older somebody.
I'm going to stop you because our internet, I don't know whether it's on your side or our side, but I want you to reverse, because it's got a little bit there. I don't know why, from a signal point of view.
Okay.
Back. Okay. Go from what age is the book from, and then carry on from there.
So I have put together a manuscript which should be coming out anytime now. It is basically dedicated mainly for between the teen years, or let me say preteen and the teen years. It's basically all things about puberty. Again, one of the aims was to educate the child and the parent. So it is done in conjunction with somebody older. You're building trust. You're building moments of having difficult conversation with kind of like a cheat sheet in terms of what to know. There are specific things that are directed or written for the adult, or this is how you handle this kind of situation. But also a lot of exercises, because I believe if one girl has the book, they can pass on the information to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. How do we treat one another, when it comes to puberty? And what does your normal look like? Oh, my normal looks like this. These are the conversations women have been having forever and still continue to have. And what we are doing basically is introducing an educational tool that just allows you to know that, okay, I'm in the right direction. I'm being age appropriate. I've given all the information. What about things that I'm not sure about as a parent? I mean, things like, for example,
that is so amazing, Dr. Guy. I'm thinking, where was your book 13 years ago or 25 years ago when we needed it? Because
that's what I thought as well. I was like, where was the book when I was a teen?
Because I can get that book and sit down with my boys and say, listen, the reason why a girl goes through this is 1, 2, 3, 4. And also, I hope your book also includes boys, in us sitting down with our boys to say the reason why you're having hair, because my boy has started having hair. So yeah, it's another thing, another topic that we must sit.
So do that.
We'll do phase 2, which is specifically for the boys. But what I did highlight quite intentionally in this particular one was how boys and men can get involved in a woman's life as she goes through these phases. I think I will be sure to do part 2, which will just focus specifically.
As a nation of South Africa, our boys really need that.
I think you become a mom of a boy.
Yeah. I mean,
this is
noted, definitely noted.
This is so exciting. So can you give us a date? When is it coming out?
Where are we now? In April.
Yes.
We are definitely looking sometime in May. So we will give all the, in terms of the book itself, definitely coming out in May.
So excited for this, and we cannot wait to support you on this. And you really are a complete inspiration and a I suppose a forerunner in terms of educating and promoting this sense of well-being
Definitely.
and love of oneself as well. So thank you for that. You're amazing.
And
Thank
you are freeing us as South Africans and as Black South Africans, I must say for my part, to actually put the topic on the table to say it's not self-shame. You need to love it and you need to celebrate it.
As any
Absolutely.
woman,
You
mother, parent, I think it is
Definitely.
amazing. Not just anyone who's planning to have a child or anyone in a reproductive space, but just anyone who is developing in this sort of space. So thank you very
Wow.
much to that. And again, I mean, we've moved all the way from speaking about obesity and being overweight and menstruation all the way through to just general education. So we will touch base again when your manuscript comes out, and we'll talk a lot more about
Definitely.
periods and supporting the amazing nation of women in this country.
Yes.
And thank you very, very much. How do we get hold of you if anyone wants to know more about you after we've posted this video?
Right. So in terms of consultation and in-person consultation, I am based at Morningside Mediclinic in Sandton. That's corner of Rivonia and Hill Road. But for people who are anywhere else in the country, I do share quite a lot of educational material on our social pages. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and there we go as Dr.Gynae. So Dr.Gynae. And if there's like further questions,
Yes.
very often we try and answer, so you can, slot into the DMs and ask questions. We try and answer as many, but sometimes we just can't get through all of them.
No problem. Dr. Gynae, as usual and as always, baby Yum Yum really wants to celebrate you and say we support, we celebrate, and thank you for your time.
And we see you. So thank you very, very much. And again, Dr. Gynae is a regular contributor to babyyumyum.co.za. So check out some of the other works and some of the other information that has been posted on our different social media channels. Thank you very, very much. And go forth and be productive.
Siyabonga.
Oh, yes, productive, but not in that other sense.
No, not in that. Unless you
Every
really
time
want
people
to
ask
know
me,
when you talk
are you
to
having more children? I'm like, I've got plenty of children. They're just being raised in other families.
Have a brilliant
Thank you so much, guys. This was
Thank
really
you
lovely.
for your time.